After a 12-hour grueling construction shift, I came home with groceries and inexpensive gifts for my wife and kids, and my wife scornfully said, "Couldn't you buy something better? My father is right. You'll never be able to provide for us like a real man." I silently left. A week later, her father found out who bought all his debts from the bank. I still remember the weight of my boots as I dragged myself up our front porch steps that evening. 12 hours of hauling concrete blocks under the August sun had left my shoulders burning and my hands calloused despite the gloves. The plastic grocery bags cut into my fingers, milk, eggs, some ground beef for tomorrow, a bunch of yellow daisies that were on sale at Kroger, and 2 small action figures I'd picked up at Dollar General for the kids. Nothing fancy, but it was payday, and I wanted to bring something home. When I pushed open the door, Emma was pacing in the living room, her iPhone pressed to her ear, designer jeans I couldn't afford hugging her hips. Our modest ranch-style house in Henderson felt smaller whenever she was in one of these moods. I could tell by the way she rolled her eyes when I walked in that she was talking to her father. "Yeah, Dad, he just walked in, looking like something the cat dragged in, as usual," she said, not even trying to lower her voice. I set the groceries down on our worn Formica countertop and pulled out the daisies and toys. Tyler and Zoe came running, their small faces lighting up at the sight of the plastic superhero and princess figurine. That moment, that brief flash of joy in their eyes, almost made the day's exhaustion worth it, until Emma ended her call and saw what I'd brought. "Seriously? Dollar store toys and wilting flowers?" She picked up the daisies with 2 fingers like they were contaminated. "Couldn't you buy something better? My father is right. You'll never be able to provide for us like a real man." The words hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. Not because they were new. I'd heard variations of this sentiment for years, but because she'd said it in front of the kids. Tyler's little hand tightened around his superhero. Zoe's smile vanished. "Mommy, I like my princess," Zoe whispered, clutching the $3.99 toy. Emma snatched both toys from their hands. "We don't accept cheap garbage in this house. Your grandfather is getting you proper presents this weekend." I stood there, covered in dried sweat and concrete dust, watching my children's faces crumple. Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped clean off. Without a word, I turned, walked out the door, and closed it quietly behind me. What Emma didn't know, what her father didn't know, what nobody knew, was exactly where I was heading next. Updated. Holy crap, I didn't expect this post to blow up overnight. Thanks for all the supportive comments. Several people asked if I ever stood up to Emma before. Honestly, I tried many times, but it was always just a joke, or "You're too sensitive." Anyone else have a partner who constantly belittles your career choice? The irony of Emma's constant disdain for my work was that construction had been our financial salvation, just not in the way she thought. 7 years ago, when I was still trying to impress her and her father, Ronald Whitaker, who never let me forget he owned Whitaker Property Management, I'd taken on side jobs, roofing on weekends, drywall repair in the evenings, anything to supplement my foreman's salary at Meridian Construction. One Saturday, I was fixing a leak in an elderly widow's roof when she mentioned she was selling her late husband's office space. A tiny 300-square-foot room above a laundromat downtown. The price was so low it seemed like a mistake. I'd been saving every extra penny, living on ramen while Emma bought Kate Spade purses, and had just enough for a down payment. I told Emma it was for a work storage unit. She didn't care enough to ask questions. That storage unit became my sanctuary and the foundation of everything that followed. While Emma was busy posting Instagram photos of cocktails with her friends, complaining about our embarrassing Honda Civic, I was in that tiny office studying investment books, real estate forums, stock market fundamentals. I worked my regular construction shift, did side jobs, and spent nights learning how money really worked. My first investment was purchasing the foreclosed house next door to a property Meridian was renovating. The owner had died, the family wanted quick cash, and I knew the neighborhood was up and coming. Bought it for $42,000, put in $15,000 of sweat equity and materials at contractor prices, sold it 8 months later for $91,000. Emma thought the extra money came from over time. I formed an LLC called Highland Investments under my middle and mother's maiden names. No connection to me on paper. Used the profits to buy 2 more distressed properties, flipped them, reinvested. While Emma was showing off the occasional good month bonus I'd give the family to keep up appearances, Highland was purchasing small apartment buildings. Ronald Whitaker, meanwhile, loved playing the big-shot businessman. He drove a leased Mercedes, wore tailored suits, and never missed an opportunity to remind me I was just a construction worker at family gatherings. What he didn't mention was that Whitaker Property Management was hemorrhaging money. He'd overextended, buying commercial properties at peak market with minimum down payments. The recession hit his tenants hard. Many vacated. Loans went underwater. I knew all this because part of my education included tracking publicly available real estate records and debt filings. I watched as Ronald refinanced, took out second mortgages, and eventually started borrowing from high-interest, private lenders. Classic death spiral. All while he continued showing up at Sunday dinners with expensive gifts for the kids and lectures for me about financial responsibility. The real tipping point came last Christmas. Ronald gave Emma a $1 in $200 Gucci handbag while telling a story about how one of his construction worker tenants was begging for an extension on rent. The contempt in his voice when he said construction worker, like we were a different species, made something shift in me. I started tracking Whitaker Property Management's debt more actively, contacting the banks holding his mortgages, positioning Highland Investments as an interested debt buyer. For 7 years, I'd lived a double life. Construction worker by day, successful investor by night. I drove a used pickup to work sites while Highland's property manager drove a company BMW to collect rents. I packed leftovers for lunch while my investment portfolio crossed into 7 figures. All because Emma and her father had made it abundantly clear. A man who works with his hands isn't worthy of respect. I never planned to reveal any of this. The original goal was simply financial security for my family, regardless of what they thought of me. But that night, watching Emma take those dollar store toys from my children's hands, something fundamentally changed. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was years of stored resentment. Or maybe it was finally understanding that no amount of provision would ever earn their respect. So instead of heading to a bar or a friend's place to cool off, I drove straight to my storage unit office above Sunshine Laundromat, climbed the back stairs that smelled of fabric softener, unlocked 3 separate locks, and sat down at my desk. The small space was Spartan. Just a desk, computer, filing cabinet, and a small mini-fridge. On the walls, framed property deeds and investment certificates. My real life. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to my attorney, then made a phone call to the VP of Commercial Lending at First National Bank, the holder of Ronald's largest loans. The conversation was brief, professional. The wheels were already in motion from previous discussions. All that remained was to execute the plan I'd been positioning for months. As I hung up, I stared at the photo on my desk. Tyler and Zoe at the beach last summer, building a sandcastle. Emma had refused to take the picture because I was all sweaty and gross from helping the kids with their creation. A passing tourist offered to snap it for us. Looking at their smiling faces, I wondered if I was making a huge mistake, if revealing the truth would hurt them more than it would help. But then I remembered their disappointed expressions as the toys were snatched away, and I knew something had to change. The example being set for them, that worth is measured by brand names and appearances, would damage them far more in the long run. I sent the email, finalizing the terms. Highland Investments would purchase all of Whitaker Property Management's outstanding debt at 68 cents on the dollar, a significant discount reflecting the risk of default. The total purchase, just over $3.4 million in obligations. Within a week, Ronald Whitaker would discover that his financial fate now rested entirely in the hands of his worthless son-in-law. The next morning, I went to work as usual, punched in at 6 a.m., directed my crew on the Marshall Tower project downtown, helped install support beams when we were shorthanded. Nobody at the site knew that my company owned the project, or that I'd personally approved the architectural plans they were following. To them, I was just Mike, the reliable foreman who didn't mind getting his hands dirty. Emma called 4 times before lunch. I let it go to voicemail. The messages ranged from angry, "How dare you walk out like that?" to manipulative, "The kids are asking where Daddy is." I texted back only once. "Staying at Dave's for a few days. Need time to think." Dave was a coworker who'd crash at my place when his wife kicked him out. Emma had met him exactly once and found him crude and embarrassing. The perfect cover. In reality, I was staying at one of my rental properties that had just been renovated. A modern 1-bedroom with skyline views that would rent for $2,200 a month once listed. I slept better that night than I had in years, even on the air mattress I'd hastily purchased from Target. For the next 5 days, I maintained radio silence, with Emma beyond basic texts about the kids. Meanwhile, the legal machinery was grinding forward. My attorney had expedited everything, and First National Bank was eager to offload Ronald's increasingly risky debt. By Friday, the paperwork was complete. Highland Investments now owned every loan, lien, and financial obligation of Whitaker Property Management. On Saturday morning at 9:32 a.m., Ronald Whitaker received a certified letter informing him that his debt had been purchased by Highland Investments, LLC. A second notice informed him that the new debt holder was reviewing his payment history and financial status, with all options on the table, including calling the loans due immediately. I know the exact time because at 9:47 a.m. my phone exploded with notifications. 15 text messages from Emma in under 2 minutes. 6 missed calls from Ronald. 3 from Emma's mother. Even one from Emma's brother in Phoenix, who hadn't spoken to me in 3 years after I refused to invest in his energy drink startup. I turned my phone off and went for a run along the river trail. 5 miles of peace before the storm. When I returned to my temporary apartment, there was a single voicemail from Ronald. His voice, normally so condescending and smooth, was trembling. "Mike, we need to talk immediately. This is a serious situation. Call me back." I showered, made myself some coffee, and waited. At exactly noon, I called my attorney instead. "They're panicking," she confirmed. "Ronald's attorney has called twice already. They want to know who's behind Highland and what they want." "And you said?" "Exactly what you instructed. That the principal prefers to remain anonymous for now, and that a meeting can be arranged for Monday at our offices." I thanked her and hung up. Then I finally turned my phone back on and called Emma. She answered on the first ring. "Where the hell have you been? Dad is having a complete meltdown." "No, I'm sorry. No concern for my well-being after nearly a week of separation. Just anger that I wasn't available to deal with her father's crisis." "I know about Highland," I said simply. There was a pause. "What are you talking about?" "Highland Investments, the company that bought your dad's debt." "I know the owner." Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning. "How? Who is it?" Her voice had changed, curiosity replacing anger. "I can arrange a meeting, Monday at 10 a.m., Pierce & Associates law offices downtown. Mike, if you know something, you need to tell me right now. Dad says this company could bankrupt him if they call in the loans." 10 a.m. Monday, I repeated, then hung up. Sunday was surreal. Emma showed up at my workplace looking for me, called every friend she could think of, eventually texted that we needed to talk about our marriage, and that she was willing to work things out. A sudden change of heart that conveniently coincided with her father's financial crisis. I didn't respond. Instead, I met with my property manager to review the week's activities, signed off on 2 new acquisitions, and had dinner with my attorney to go over Monday's strategy. For the first time in our 7-year relationship, I felt completely in control. Monday morning, I arrived at Pierce & Associates at 9:30 a.m. Susan Pierce, my attorney for the past 4 years, had arranged everything as I'd requested. The conference room had bottled water, coffee, and the necessary documents arranged in precise stacks. I wore a tailored charcoal suit I kept at the office for investment meetings, a far cry from my usual work clothes. At 9:58 a.m., the receptionist announced their arrival. Ronald, Emma, and Ronald's attorney, a nervous-looking man named Goldstein, were escorted in. Their expressions when they saw me sitting at the head of the table cycled through confusion, disbelief, and, in Ronald's case, the beginning of anger. "Mike, what are you doing here? Where's the Highland representative?" Ronald demanded. Susan stepped forward. "Mr. Whitaker, please take a seat. Mr. Foster is the representative of Highland Investments." Emma laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "That's ridiculous. Mike's a construction worker. He doesn't know anything about investments." I opened the folder in front of me and slid the first document across the table. Highland's Articles of Incorporation with my name listed as sole owner and CEO. Highland Investments, LLC. Founded 7 years ago. Current portfolio includes 23 residential properties, 4 commercial buildings, and as of Friday, approximately $3.4 million in debt previously held by First National Bank. My voice was calm, matter of fact. Ronald's face had gone pale. Emma kept looking between me and the document like it might transform into something that made sense to her. "This is some kind of joke," she finally said. I slid the second document across, a complete financial statement of Highland Investments, showing assets of just over $7.2 million. "Does this look like a joke to you?" Ronald's attorney cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss the terms of the debt restructuring that might be available?" I nodded and outlined the options I was willing to consider. The terms weren't punitive. I wasn't interested in destroying Ronald's business, despite what he might deserve. I simply wanted fair repayment with reasonable interest. What I didn't mention yet was the other condition, the one that had nothing to do with money. As I finished explaining the financial terms, Ronald seemed to recover some of his composure. "So you've been what? Living some kind of double life? Playing working-class hero while secretly running a company?" His tone suggested I'd done something underhanded. "I built Highland from nothing," I replied. "Started with one small property I bought with money I earned working overtime and side jobs. Reinvested every profit. Studied investment strategies. Every night while you were telling everyone I'd never amount to anything because I worked construction." Emma finally found her voice. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years living in that small house, driving old cars, buying dollar store toys. You let me believe we were struggling." The entitlement in her voice made something harden inside me. "Would it have changed how you treated me? Would you have respected me more if you knew I had money?" Because that's not respect, Emma. That's materialism. Ronald leaned forward, businessman mode activating now that he saw a potential way out. Look, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. I'm sure we can work something out that benefits everyone. Perhaps Highland could use someone with my experience as a consultant? I almost laughed at his transparency. Instead, I slid the final document across the table. Not a financial statement, but a simple list. Dates, times, and exact quotes, spanning back years. Every dismissive comment about construction workers. Every time he'd belittled my career in front of the children. Every backhanded compliment and outright insult. My condition is simple, I said as they scanned the document. Respect. For me, for my work, for the example we set for Tyler and Zoe. I don't care about your approval, Ronald. I care about my children growing up understanding the value of hard work, whatever form it takes. The room fell silent. Emma was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't. Updated. Thanks for the support, everyone. Many asked why I didn't just divorce Emma immediately. Truth is, I still care about my kids' stability. Some suggested I've been financial abusing Emma by hiding assets. Let me clarify. I've provided well for my family, just not at the luxury level she wanted. Have you ever had to make tough choices between your dignity and family stability? Consequences. The fallout was both immediate and ongoing. Ronald signed the restructuring agreement the next day. His options were limited, and he knew it. His business would survive, but his pride had taken a devastating blow. The man who had spent years looking down on the help now owed his financial survival to a construction worker. Emma's reaction was more complicated. The night after the meeting, she showed up at my temporary apartment, a place she'd normally have considered beneath her, with tears and apologies. I listened as she cycled through shock, anger, hurt, and finally a kind of desperate bargaining. We can start over, she insisted. Buy a bigger house. Get the kids into private school. You don't have to keep working construction. We could travel, enjoy your success together. She didn't get it. She still didn't get it. I like my job, I told her quietly. I'm good at it. I find it satisfying to build something real, to work with my hands. The fact that you think I should quit now that you know I have money just proves my point. In the weeks that followed, Emma underwent what looked superficially like transformation. She stopped posting materialistic content on social media, started volunteering at a community center, told friends they were scaling back to focus on family values. But I noticed she always mentioned these changes when others could overhear, always with a sideways glance to see if I was noticing her efforts. The children were struggling to understand the sudden tension. I maintained my regular schedule with them, coaching Tyler's Little League team, taking Zoe to her dance classes. I explained that Mommy and Daddy were working through some grown-up problems, but that we both loved them very much. When Tyler asked if we were getting divorced, I honestly answered that I didn't know yet. At work, nothing changed. I still arrived at 6 a.m., still wore my steel-toed boots and hard hat, still worked alongside my crew. The only difference was that I no longer hid who I was from Dave and a few other close coworkers. Their reactions ranged from disbelief to admiration to good-natured ribbing about working for the pleasure of it. But there was respect there too, especially when they understood I wasn't quitting. Ronald avoided me entirely for a month, then made an awkward attempt at reconciliation at Tyler's birthday party. He brought an extravagant gift, a junior ATV that was completely age inappropriate, and tried to pull me aside for a man-to-man talk that felt rehearsed and hollow. When I didn't immediately welcome him back into my good graces, he left, early, telling Emma loud enough for me to hear that some people just can't let go of grudges. The most difficult conversation was with my in-laws' friends, the Petersons, who'd always been kind to me despite Ronald's influence. Martin Peterson pulled me aside at a neighborhood barbecue and asked point-blank why I'd continued living like a regular Joe when I could afford better. What exactly would better get me? I asked him. More possessions? People who respect my wallet instead of me? Martin considered this, then nodded slowly. Fair point. Though a slightly newer truck wouldn't kill you. That Chevy of yours sounds like it's running on prayers and WD-40. I laughed genuinely for what felt like the first time in months. By the 3-month mark, Emma and I had started marriage counseling, not because I was convinced our relationship could be saved, but because I wanted to give honest effort before making any permanent decisions. The therapist, Dr. Winters, didn't pull punches. You've both been living inauthentic lives, she told us in our 3rd session. Mike by hiding his financial success, Emma by basing her self-worth on appearances. The question is whether you can build something real now that those facades have crumbled. It was a fair assessment. I had hidden a major part of my life from my wife, whatever my justifications. That realization led to my decision to move back home on a trial basis, after 4 months apart. Not into our shared bedroom. I took the guest room, but back under the same roof for the children's sake. The house felt different now. Emma had removed many of the status symbol decorations she'd previously insisted on. The overpriced art she didn't actually like was gone. The uncomfortable but fashionable furniture had been replaced with pieces that actually invited you to sit. It was a start. What really caught my attention was finding Tyler's Dollar General superhero figure prominently displayed on his bookshelf rather than hidden away. When I asked him about it, his answer brought a lump to my throat. Mom said it's special because you got it for me even when you were really tired. She said we shouldn't care if things are expensive as long as they're given with love. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. A year has passed since the day I walked out. The Marshall Tower project is complete, a gleaming 32-story addition to our city's skyline, built by hands my father-in-law once dismissed as worthless. I still work as a foreman, though now I occasionally take meetings as Highland's CEO when necessary. My crew knows the truth now, but they treat me no differently. If anything, there's a deeper respect that comes from understanding I work alongside them by choice, not necessity. Emma and I are still together, though our relationship bears little resemblance to what it once was. The designer clothes are gone, replaced by a woman I'm slowly getting to know, someone who volunteers at homeless shelters and has started taking community college courses in early childhood education. She's finding her own identity outside of her father's materialistic shadow. Some days I glimpse the girl I fell in love with before status and appearances consumed her. Other days the old entitlement flares up and we take 2 steps back. Marriage counseling continues weekly. Ronald has changed the least, though circumstances forced adjustments. Whitaker Property Management still operates, now with strict financial oversight from Highland. He's less flashy these days, drives a sensible Audi instead of the Mercedes, and has stopped giving unsolicited financial advice at family gatherings. When he starts to slip into old patterns, Emma surprisingly is often the one to shut it down. Their relationship has become complicated, a father struggling to accept his daughter's shifting values. The children have thrived in the new family dynamic. Tyler recently announced he wants to build things like Daddy when he grows up. Zoe still treasures that Dollar General princess, which now holds a place of honor on her dresser. They're learning that worth isn't measured by price tags, a lesson I wish I'd had the courage to teach them sooner. Last week, Emma found me in the garage working on a handmade dollhouse for Zoe's birthday. She sat on a stool, watching me sand. The tiny staircase. You could just buy one, you know, she said. But the old judgment was gone from her voice. It was just an observation. I agreed, blowing sawdust from the miniature banister. But then it wouldn't be from me. It would just be from my wallet. She nodded, quiet for a moment. I get that now. I didn't before, but I do now. It wasn't an epic declaration of understanding or a dramatic reconciliation scene. Just a small moment of genuine connection, worth more than all the designer handbags and status symbols in the world. I don't know if our marriage will ultimately survive. Some wounds heal with scars that change how things function forever. But I do know that whatever happens, my children will grow up understanding that dignity can't be bought, that work done with integrity is never shameful, and that true worth has nothing to do with net worth. As for Highland Investments, it continues to grow. I've started a scholarship program for construction workers wanting to learn property development, and a training initiative for at-risk youth to learn building trades. The office above Sunshine Laundromat is now Highland's official headquarters. I kept it as a reminder of where it all began. Sometimes I think about that evening a year ago, standing in our kitchen with groceries and wilting daisies, hearing those cutting words. It was both an ending and a beginning, the death of a lie and the birth of truth, painful, necessary, and ultimately freeing. Updated. It's been amazing connecting with so many of you who've shared similar experiences. Your messages about finding worth beyond material success really hit home. Emma and I are still working through things day by day, sometimes hour by hour. There's no perfect ending, just the ongoing work of building something authentic. Would you stay in a marriage that's slowly healing, or would the broken trust be too much to overcome?